Before the lesson, sing number 821. Jonathan will speak to us in just a few moments. Before that, let's sing number 821. We'll sing the first and last verse. 8, 2, 1. Let's sing. Oh, thou blessed Rock of Ages, trusting now, dear Lord, in Thee. Keep me till my journey's ended, till Thy blessed face I see. Hide me, O blessed Rock of Ages, till Thy blessed face I see. When the storm around me rages, Rock of Ages, hide Thou me. When my journey is completed, and there's no more work to do, Savior, guide my weary spirit, happy land beyond the blue. Hide me, O blessed Rock of Ages, till Thy blessed face I see. When the storm around me rages, Rock of Ages, hide Thou me.
Good morning. It's so good to see each of you here with us this morning. So glad that you could all be here. We do have several visitors. I know that we've got Brianna's whole family back there, the Carter family. We're glad to have them. The Kelly family with us, visiting with us. Always good to see them and have them here. I know that we have other visitors. Got my parents here with us this morning. It's not often that we're able to get to, we actually, because of our early service, we get to go to Tilden sometimes and visit with them there. But usually when we're here for services, he is at Tilden Church of Christ. He's the minister there. He's preaching over there most of the time, so he very, very seldom gets an opportunity. But him and Mom had the opportunity this morning, and so I'm glad that they could be with us this morning. Definitely always good to see any and have any visitors here with us. I know that we've got several of our own out. Obviously this time of the year, it's time to go and visit with family, get together and have good fellowship with our families, get to eat a lot, open presents. I love it all. I love every bit of it. Just a good time of the year. And I know that Norman and Joyce, that's where they are. I think they're down south this weekend visiting family, as others are, and others will be, I'm sure, later on this week. So just make sure to be careful as you're out traveling the roads for sure. I hope you'll take your Bible. I hope everyone has their Bible. You know, it's hard to come together and study from God's Word if you don't have your Bible. And so as we go through the study this morning, everyone, I would love for you to follow along. Turn to Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5. By the way, I actually stayed up late last night. I created a PowerPoint, and I completely had forgotten that our clicker's messed up, so I can't even use it this morning. So I'll probably preach it next Sunday too, so get ready. Not really, but I did have a PowerPoint ready, and maybe it'll come in use one day. Matthew chapter 5. Parents, make sure that you're letting your kids look on with you too. Encourage them to point at the verses and follow along as we go through our studies so that they can see the importance of studying from God's Word as well. So have you ever heard the expression, maybe you've used the expression, well, you know, they say, followed by whatever they say, right? I can remember, and I don't even know why, so don't really ask me. I don't know why I thought of this example, but I can remember it popped in my head as I was working on this sermon in a conversation with my mom one time, and I never had poison oak in my life. I used to play out in the woods like every day as a kid, right? Never had a poison oak rash ever. And all of a sudden I turned like 18 or 19, and boom, I just like get it everywhere, and it's terrible. And if you've ever had poison oak, you know that it's just very unpleasant, right? It's just not good. I like that, amen. Thank you. It's terrible. You don't want it. If you've never gotten it, be thankful. That's all I can say. But I can remember, I'm like, Mom, what can I do? Like, you know, I don't really want to go to the doctor and get a shot, but if I have to, I will. And she was like, well, you know, they say if you run it under some hot water for a certain period of time, that it'll take some of the itch away. And I was like, you know, I don't know if this is going to work or not. I don't really know who they is anyways. Do we ever know who they is? But I'm going to do it, and I promise you, ever since she's told me that, because of what they say, I run my poison oak under hot water, and I don't really know if it works or not, but I do it, you know? So we do things like that. We use this expression to you know, get a point across. It's usually a common saying, right? A lot of times, somewhere we've heard down the line that somebody years and years ago might have said, or somebody just made it up, right? And we go along with it sometimes. We use this statement to explain why we believe one way or why we believe another way about something. Most of the time when we use it, it's all in good fun, or it's about something like running your poison oak under hot water, right? However, I think it becomes a problem when we start relying on what they say about things within our Christian lives or about things within the church. We start relying on what other people are saying rather than relying on what God has said. We start relying on what I want to think or what I say than what God has said in the Scriptures. You see, whoever they is, they don't have authority. I don't have authority. You don't have authority. Jesus is the only one with the authority. How many times have you heard, you know, if you've ever been in a study with anyone that are not familiar with the church, they're not Christians. If you've been in a study with them, have you heard them say, well, I think, yada, yada, yada. Or, well, my preacher says this. You hear that a lot, right? I've heard it several times. I can remember one time I was studying with some people. I can't remember the exact topic. We were studying some things within the Bible. I think they were asking what the difference was between the church and whatever denomination they were. And I remember a girl. Now, this girl was not like 7 years old. She was 17 years old. And she looks up and she asks her mom, well, Mama, what do we believe? I'm like, you're 17 years old. And her mama turns to her and she says, you believe what I tell you to believe. And that's the problem that we have today. Most of the people in the world only care to believe, only care to follow, and only care to listen to what their mom and daddy said. They only care to really give ear to what people have said before rather than going to Scripture for authority. And it's a problem. We have this problem within the church today, but that's not how it works. And so we see here in Matthew chapter 5, there's several different places as we get to about midway through the chapter where Jesus said, you know what? Before time, they said this. He says, but I say this. And so that's our study this evening. Jesus teaches some of these Jews. And so I want to look at the context. Matthew chapter 5. If you remember the end of chapter 4, Jesus has been going. He's been teaching in the synagogues, right? Who do you find in the synagogues? The Jews, right? Supposedly his own brethren. And that's who he goes to first. These people have been prophesied to. They've had the old law, which points and directs their minds exactly to Christ. It tells them, hey, the Messiah will come one day, right? They've had this time where they should be looking for Jesus to come, right? And so Jesus comes to earth, and he goes and he preaches to these people who should be ready. And so he goes to the synagogues, he goes to the Jews, he starts teaching them. He's going from city to city to city. And what, as a result from it, obviously, he has followers. People begin to follow him. And so he has a multitude. In beginning of chapter 5, seeing the multitudes, he went up on a mountain, and when he was seated, his disciples came to him. And so we have Matthew chapters 5 through 7, where we see all these Jews who had been listened to the teachings of Christ. They want more. They want to hear more, and so they begin to follow Jesus. And we have Matthew chapters 5 through 7, the Sermon on the Mount is what we call it. Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and he begins there, Matthew chapter 5. Verse 2, he opened his mouth and he taught them, saying. And so we have in verses 3 through 12 what we call the Beatitudes, right? These attitudes that Jesus was teaching to these people, and he explains to them, these are the attitudes that you need to have if you want to be a disciple of me. And so Jesus stressed that to the Jews there. And then verses 13 through 16, obviously a very familiar passage. You know, Matthew 5:16 is probably one of the most familiar passages throughout the world, that we're supposed to be a light. And Jesus was teaching that to them, that they are to be a light to the rest of the world, and that they are to be the salt of the earth. That's Christians, Jesus' disciples. If we want to be a follower of Christ, we are to be the salt of the earth. We are to be the light, a light to the world. And then he gets in verse 17 through 20, and he kind of begins to set the stage, as we've said. Look at verse 17. Do not think that I came, remember Jesus is teaching here to Jews, right? Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. And so, once again, these people should be ready, right? They should have been teaching all along, passing down from generation to the next. The Messiah will come, and he's going to be God's son, and he will have authority. And so Christ says, don't think I came to destroy the old law. I came to fulfill it. Everything that is said, I'm here now. This is what God's plan was. For surely I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. And he says, whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So he's trying to get them to understand it's time. You know, John the Baptist, others had been kind of leading the way for Christ to come, right? And Jesus is trying to get them to understand it's time. You know, this Old Testament law in which you're so attached to and so used to is not going to be the way anymore. There's going to be a new covenant because that old law has been fulfilled. And so he's setting the stage there, and verse 19, you know, he speaks to the words he's about to teach them, and he kind of discusses with them pretty much, you're not to weigh these things. One thing's not better than the other. They're all essential for Christian living. And so then we get to the six, really, I've got 5 points. There's really 6 things, and I've got 2 of them kind of meshed into one point, in which Jesus says, they said before, but you know, they say this, but I say this, and I want us to study this today. And I think we need to remember, you know, it doesn't matter what they say. And that's what Jesus is trying to get them to understand. What they've said before, you know, and so really what he's getting them to understand, these things that we're going to look at, they come from the old law. A lot of them were law, Old Testament law. However, over time, many of these people had perverted these things to twist and make it to what they wanted to sound good for their own lives. And so they passed it down that way, generation to the next. And Jesus says, I don't care what they say, I say this. Matthew 28, verse 18. Remember, Jesus came and spoke to them saying what? All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. So look at Matthew chapter 5, verse 21. You have heard that it was said to those of old. So there we have, they said, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of judgment. But Jesus says, I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. Whoever says to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council, but whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hell, fire. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Agree with your adversary quickly while you're on the way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge hand you over to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. He says, assuredly I say to you, you will by no means get out there till you have paid the last penny. And so we have where Jesus says, they said, don't murder. Now, do you remember that? Do you remember where that's found in the Old Testament? Exodus chapter 20. That's one of the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill. Well, of course it was said before, right? But obviously these Jewish people with whom Jesus was teaching often had the wrong attitude toward their own brethren even. And so they kind of took it and they would twist it and they would say, well, you know, the law says in one of the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill. But you know what that doesn't mean? That doesn't mean I have to treat them right. So they would say the law says thou shalt not kill, but that doesn't mean I have to love these people. So that's what these people were doing. And so Jesus makes a statement, you know, that's what your ancestors, that's what your fathers have said to you. He says, but I say this. They say don't murder. I say don't be angry with a brother without a cause. So he's making the point. You know, they had that attitude of, well, as long as we don't kill them, you know, what's it really matter? The Raca there, you see, it says whoever says to his brother Raca. That word means vain, empty, worthless. The Jews used it as a word of contempt. It says it is derived from a root meaning to spit. So you can see the attitude that Jesus is talking here about, the attitude that we have against our brethren sometimes. So the idea really is that they needed to quit holding grudges. They needed to quit speaking evil against their own brothers. I think verse 24 really speaks to the importance of it. He said it's so important that you come to the altar to offer sacrifices with your gifts and your offerings. But if you've got a problem with your brother, if you've wronged your brother, or maybe your brother has wronged you and you're holding a grudge against them, you hate them, and you act in that hatred towards them, you better go make it right before you ever try to offer that sacrifice to God. That's how important it is to make sure that we're right with our own brethren. But we don't really have this problem, I don't think, right? We don't have this problem within the church. And we all love each other. It's all good all the time. Absolutely not. We have problems within the church. We have problems with brothers and sisters in Christ talking behind each other's back, talking bad about one another, just dogging one another, just completely, and it's a problem. These are your brothers and sisters in Christ. And you know what Jesus says? If you've got a problem with them, if maybe they've wronged you, maybe they have, that doesn't give you a right to treat them in a wrong way. Maybe you've wronged them. He says, we're here this morning, right? We're here to offer our sacrifices to God, our worship to God. That's exactly what we're doing here this morning. But if we've got a problem with our brother or sister in Christ, and we're just overlooking, we're just letting it fly under the rug, we've got a problem within our own lives. We've got a problem within our own hearts. And we expect God to accept our sacrifices as we worship together today when we're not right within our own lives. It becomes a problem. Notice what the Scripture says about how we should treat a brother or sister. Turn with me to James chapter 4. James chapter 4. James 4, verse 11, he says, "Do not speak evil of one another, brethren. He who speaks evil of a brother and judges his brother speaks evil of the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge." Do not speak. If you've got a problem, get it worked out. Quit holding on to it. It becomes a problem within your own life. 1 John chapter 4. 1 John chapter 4, verse 20 and 21 says, if someone says, "I love God," and hates his brother, he's a liar. If you hold on to that, and when we want to turn around and say, "Well, I love God, I want to be right with God," no, you don't. Because if you did, you'd make it right with your brother. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen, how can he love God whom he has not seen? And this commandment we have from him, that he who loves God must love his brother also. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 6 to 7. And if you'll remember, and look at verse 3, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Remember verse 3, it kind of begins a list there. Paul talking to the Thessalonians, the brethren there at Thessalonica, and he says, "This is the will of God. This is your sanctification. This is what sets you apart." And in one of those, he says in verse 6 and 7, that no one should take advantage of and defraud his brother in this matter, because the Lord is the avenger of all such, as we also forewarned you and testified. If we've got a problem with one of our own, and we don't make it right, then we've got a problem ourselves. Now go back to Matthew chapter 5. Jesus says, they may have said this, here's what I say. Again, Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 through 32. Matthew 5, 27 through 32. Here he goes again with that statement. "You've heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not commit adultery.'" So remember, also, part of the old law, right? "Thou shalt not commit adultery." He says, you have heard that it was said before, okay? To those of old. And it's been passed down through the time. He says, "But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than your whole body to be cast into hell." Verse 31, "Furthermore, it's been said, whoever divorces his wife," and once again, this is the two-part I was telling you about. And Jesus says, it's been said before, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. And he says, "But I say to you," verse 32, "whoever divorces his wife for any reason except sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a woman who is divorced commits adultery." Now, obviously, there was a problem with the Jewish people. That's why Jesus was bringing this up. And guess what? It's sad to say, but we do have this same problem within the church today. And if you really look into the deep part of all of this, it all comes down to it's a heart problem, right? It's a problem that I have within my own attitude. It's kind of that idea, I'm not going to kill him, as we said earlier. I'm not going to kill him, but that doesn't mean I have to love him, right? And so we twist it. We say, well, I'm not killing him, but I don't have to treat him right. I don't have to be around him. I don't have to be a Christian towards him. No, not right at all. So that's an attitude problem. And I'm not going to commit adultery, but that doesn't mean I can't look, right? See, it's an attitude problem. So Jesus establishes with them, I don't care what you may think that your fathers and others have said before. Jesus says, I'm telling you this. I think he really emphasized the point there in verses 29 and 30. And he says, if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. It would be better for you to pluck your own eye out and cast it from you than for you to allow these things and hold on to these things and them lead you to hell, to be destroyed in hell. Get rid of it. I think the same principle can really be applied to many things. If something is causing you to be tempted, you need to get rid of whatever that something is. If something is aiding in your lust and therefore your sin against your husband or your wife, then you better get rid of it because it will lead you to hell. And the same thing can go towards anything, really, that tempts me to sin against God. I don't think we understand this. I think we take that too lightly sometimes. Because we like our stuff, don't we? We like our stuff. We like our friends that don't really care about God that much. We like being around them. I don't know, it gives us a different feeling, right? We like the TV shows. We like the TV shows that keep our interest. But maybe taking my mind somewhere it shouldn't. We like those movies. We like that music. It's got a good beat to it, or sounds good. But maybe taking my mind to where I'm thinking on impure things. Well, Jesus says, if your right eye causes you to sin, you better pluck it out and cast it from you. I think it's something we should really consider. Matthew chapter 5, verse 33, next point. Verse 33 there. He said, again, you have heard that it was said to those of old. He says, again, they say this, but Jesus says, you shall not, it says, you've heard those of old say, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. He says, but I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, for whatever is more than these is from the evil one. So he says, they say this before. And Jesus says, but here's what I tell you. So they say, don't swear these oaths falsely before, but I say don't swear at all. I can remember when I was a kid, and I guess this is where we got it from, remembering this passage. If you're ever talking to somebody, you really want to do something, and they tell you, we'll go, maybe your parents, we'll go to the store later, or we'll go to Walmart and get something later. Well, do you promise? Do you promise? Or you've had your friends, before when you were a kid. I don't know if they do this today. I don't know if they still say this, but you get some different news and you're like, no way. I swear. And I can remember saying as a little kid, oh, you're not supposed to swear. Y'all remember that? I don't know if they say that today or not. But I guess this is where we got it, He says, they say to not swear falsely, but I say don't swear at all. And, of course, the Jewish people would, well, the problem was the fact that they were making these oaths that they never really even were planning on keeping. So they were saying all these things. They never had it in their mind that they were going to carry them out. And Jesus said, that's wrong. If you want to be a disciple of Christ, whatever you say should be done. And same thing with us today as Christians. A Christian, as a Christian, I shouldn't have to make promises. I shouldn't have to put my hand on the Bible and swear to you something, right? If I tell you something, words come out of my mouth, it should be done if I'm a Christian. Colossians chapter 3, verses 9 to 10 says, "Do not lie to one another, since you've put off the old man with his deeds and have put on the new man, who is renewed in knowledge according to the image of him who created him." James chapter 1, verse 26 says, "If anyone among you thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue," that's part of it, bridling your tongue. If you've got a problem with lying, you've got a heart problem. You've got a sin problem. You see, as a Christian, as one who claims to be a part of Christ, I shouldn't have to make promises. I shouldn't have to swear. That's the whole thing. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Whatever is said, that should be it. How will we ever, I want you to think about this, how will we ever have a true commitment with God if we can't even stay true to our word with one another? There's no way I'll ever have a true commitment with the God of heaven if I can't stay true with our own brothers and sisters and our neighbors and those around us. Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 through 42. I just now noticed the time. I'm just going to preach all day, I guess. I'll tell you what, we'll pick up there. I've got 2 more points. We'll pick up there after. So maybe you'll want to come back. You might not to hear the rest of the sermon this afternoon. I'm telling you, I just noticed. We'll keep going, but when we think of these things, I want to go ahead and read this. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32. Most of these problems become with the heart, and they're problems that we have with our own brothers and sisters in Christ, with one another. But Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32, Paul's talking to the church at Ephesus. These Christians, these disciples of Christ, says, "Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another." Why? You know why you should do this? So all of these problems that we have within ourselves because of what people have said before, or because of what my mom and dad have said, or because of and that's why I'm holding a grudge against someone else because of what they said, what so-and-so said. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ has forgiven you. I don't have the right to hold grudges. I don't have the right to talk bad about somebody else. I don't have the right to do these things. We got to quit giving ourselves authority. Because guess what? I don't have any. I don't have any authority. You don't have any authority. Whoever they is, they don't have authority. Jesus has all authority in heaven and on earth. Matthew 28:18. So I would invite you back after our Bible study and Bible classes, and after we eat some lunch later, and we'll finish up this study here in Matthew chapter 5. So glad that you're all here. We have the opportunity now to, and make sure you understand, at any point, the Lord's invitation is always open. We don't have to do this just after a sermon is preached on Sunday or after Devo on Wednesday night. The Lord's invitation is always open for those to respond. If you have the desire to put on Christ in baptism and begin living your life for Him as a Christian, to make that commitment, you have the desire to repent from your sins and begin living as a Christian, and for God to add you to His church. And we can do that this very morning. We can assist you with that. Or maybe you're already a Christian, and maybe there's things within your life that have separated you from God. Maybe these things we've talked about today might have touched base with you. And if that's the case, know that as we should be, brothers and sisters here, that we all love you, and we hope that you will make that right with God today and not wait any longer. We'll pray with you and pray for you. If you're subject in any way this morning, though, we can stand and sing the song of invitation.